When you get hit so hard and you're knocked into another series and you age about 30 years. This chapter, whoa, a lot of character introductions, and character introductions that many of us have been looking forward to for years. Like, years. I mean, wow, we're actually finally getting the Revolutionary Army character introductions, like the big four, basically. We're getting, character introductions for the commanders of Dragon's army. And it's just like, man, this is actually happening. You would think that this would be some in-game stuff. Like, the way the Revolutionary Dragon and the Revolutionary Army has been built up for years upon years, you'd think this would be like the final arc that this would be going down, like we would get these character introductions, but that does not necessarily seem to be the case. I mean, we knew the Reverie was going to happen. Yes, we were all fully aware of this. It feels like, I don't know, I would have had to wait a lot longer just to be able to see some of these character introductions. And is anyone else, in a state of shock just because of that? Hopefully I'm not the only one, because, I mean, seeing, Morley, Karasu, Betty, and Lindbergh and all that, the way they were introduced, very epic character designs, very distinct, which I love from Oda-sensei. He always has great character designs, but he really went all in when it came to these four, because obviously they're next to the top, they're near the top level of in-game content for One Piece, because as we know, these are the revolutionary commanders. They are individuals that are up there with Dragon, and Dragon is the world's most wanted man. So obviously they're gonna be pretty ridiculous in terms of strength, and that means that for them to be resisting the world government for so long and all that, they have to be insane. We don't know exactly where their level of strength is at, but we do know for a fact that they're not weak by any means. And like I've always said, or what many have said for years now, the Revolutionary Army, they're the equivalent of endgame level. And so seeing these characters, we can expect some great things in the future from them just because of what we've seen previously from the series. I don't know how many of you noticed this, but Benny's design, pretty quality. I like the open shirt, I like the tie and all that, I'm a big fan of that. But I want to point something out that many might have missed, and it's a little bit concerning in a way, because I feel like Oda could be playing us in this chapter, and let me explain. So, in the chapter, you have it to where the Okamas, they're talking and all that on the island of Kama, and you see how they're wanting Morley to arrive. They're waiting for Morley. They're very excited for Morley to pop up. But then, they also want Betty as well to pop up. And I'm just like, that's weird. It's usually they're always about, guys. That's usually how it is. Morley, it makes sense. But then, seeing how they mention Betty as well, I'm like, Are you telling me that maybe Betty could potentially be a trap? Because let me point something out with Betty's character design. She has an open shirt, and she has a tie. The last character we actually saw with this type of design was Tashigi Smoker. You remember Tashigi Smoker and all that? Yeah. That was that type of design. So I wonder if Oda is playing us and that Betty might turn out to be a trap. I'm theorizing here, but that's what it looks like to me. Because for them to also mention Betty with Morley in the same sentence, it seems likely. Anyways, getting off of that for a second, I also want to talk about Lindbergh. Lindbergh, hopefully I'm saying his name right, love his design. Really, really good design. I'm just going to take a shot in the dark, and I want to assume that Lindbergh is probably going to go up against Vegapunk or someone very close to Vegapunk, because he is a scientist. He loves making new technology, making things, gadgets and stuff, testing stuff out. So, looking at his character, the way he was introduced in this chapter, it's very apparent that Oda most likely is going to use Lindbergh for Vegapunk. It's just common sense when you look at the character. Then we also have Karasu, which, oh my god, Karasu, I'm going to assume that he's either a mythical zone type or he's a special paramecia, but one or the other, because as we've seen it in the past in the Dressrosa arc, I want to probably show the panel on screen for you to see for yourself, but Sabo was picked up by crows at the end of that arc. When he was leaving Dressrosa, he was picked up by a bunch of crows, and now we know for a fact that it's probably Karasu because of his design and all that, and he's a crow man, basically. So when we look at all this, most likely the man is a mythical zone. He could potentially be, I forget the name of the crow god. I know there is I know there's Tengus and stuff, but I forget the name. It starts with a Y, but there is like a crow god in Japanese mythology that starts with a Y, and maybe since we've already seen Mythical Zone and stuff, like Buddha and all that added, I mean, I wonder if he might be based on something like that. So, I'm just once again speculating that maybe Karasu could be something very special when it comes to being a zone type, or he's a special Paramecia because of how he's able to make multiple copies of crows out of his body, and they're all individual parts of him, because we picked up Sabo a while back. So, anyways, moving over into Morley's design. So, Morley, he's a giant, and he is a giant with a devil fruit, which, have we seen a giant with a devil fruit? Like, have we actually seen a giant with a devil fruit? I think it back. We had the giants in Little Garden, and they didn't have a devil fruit. They was just pure strength, and Hardijin, hopefully I'm saying his name right, and Dressrosa and all that, he didn't have a devil fruit. He was trying to get the Ace's devil fruit, but he didn't have a devil fruit. The giants we saw at Elbaf, they didn't have any devil fruits either, from what I remember. So, Morley might be the first giant that we've actually ever seen, at least from what I can remember, that actually has demonstrated a devil fruit, which is very surprising when you think about it, because it's taken this long just to see someone like that, if I'm not misremembering. So, Morley, his design, it's very apparent that he is really integrated into the Okama culture from Kama's kingdom, and I'm going to assume that maybe Morley was at one point or time probably a woman, because when you look at Morley's design, Morley looks like a female in terms of, like, the clothing and all of that. So I'm going to assume that Morley was once a female, but now a dude. And then Betty is also the exact opposite. Was once a dude, turned into, you know, a woman. And that explains why they were able to talk in just, like, a standard manner in this chapter while they were just having a conversation. Morley's like, oh, they're staring at me, how gross and all that. Just, I wonder if that's, you know, some form of reference to that. Anyways, though, Morley, he also has the ability to, like, turn the ground into, like, some form of clay. He's able to move the ground and all that out of the way like it's nothing, and he was actually digging, which, by the way, I really like the fact that, I believe that is a, Seven Dwarfs reference, heave, ho, and all that. I believe that was, because the way he was coming out of the ground and all that, it reminded me of something you see from, like, dwarfs and all that, when they were, like, digging through mines or digging underground. That's what it looked like to me. Hopefully I'm not the only one that got that impression. Now, getting off of their designs for a second, we also have, you know, the situation with Betty and what she uses in terms of her devil fruit. Betty's devil fruit. First glance, it doesn't seem to be ridiculous, okay? Like, at first glance, it seems like her cheer fruit doesn't seem to be strong. But we gotta remember a couple things. Number one, this is the commanders of the Revolutionary Army. So they're obviously way above the normal person we've seen in One Piece. Number two, this is someone that has an ability that is able to cheer up the masses and encourage them, but that means that she can't probably buff herself, unless her awakened devil fruit, because we do know about awakened devil fruit, is something completely different. That's probably ridiculous. Maybe she can apply a self-buff to herself. But I will say that Benny's devil fruit is pretty scary, because when you think about these normal civilians, they fought a 52 million berry bounty enemy. Pinkbeard. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 52 million berry bounty, that's not really that high, okay? When we look at, like, everything we've seen from One Piece, okay? I mean, Arlong in general, he was a scary person, but his bounty wasn't even that high. And, I mean, at the end of the day, we all know that bounty doesn't represent strength. We also know that. It represents the threat to the world government. But even then, though, the bounty wasn't ridiculously high. And so that means that the man hasn't done a whole lot or had a lot of feats for people to really see him and, like, be scared of him. So because of this, it shows that Betty, her ability to strengthen, you know, individuals, like weak civilians that have no hockey capabilities or any devil fruits or anything, she's able to strengthen them to the point to where they're able to take down someone with a 52 million berry bounty. Because let's back up for a second and think about the beginning of One Piece. We were constantly going up against guys that were around that level of berry bounty. Like 50 million berry bounty or below, or a little bit above that. And so, when you think about all of this, you're like, whoa! She actually was able to buff regular civilians at the equivalent of maybe Nami's village to fight back against someone with a high bounty. So, like, if she would have been there for Nami's village, and buffed him, maybe they could have taken down Arlong, for all we know. It really puts in perspective of how crazy her Devil Fruit is. Now, we don't necessarily know exactly the limitations of it. We just know she's able to bring out the hidden potential, the potential of individuals with her Devil Fruit. So, for all we know, since, like, someone like Zoro, Luffy, Sanji, they're pretty much maxed out and all that when it comes to bringing out their potential, maybe her Devil Fruit might not work that well, because they already are pretty much hitting the max, like, near the end game and all that. So, if she was using it on someone like them, it wouldn't really buff them. It wouldn't be that ridiculous of a buff compared to, like, regular civilians that just seem very weak in comparison and buffed up to, like, maybe Fishman levels. So, maybe that's kind of the weakness or flaw to her Devil Fruit. But at the same time, though, it does seem that she's able to buff a considerable amount of people. So, you gotta imagine her being kind of like a support type character. Like, she has a large army, she's able to buff all these people, and they're able to charge in and be completely insanely strong. So, her Devil Fruit is insane. But it depends on the limitations of it and the people she can buff, and what level of strength people are going to be at. For instance, someone the equivalent of Luffy. If she was to buff Luffy, how much power would he gain? That's what we really need to know. I'm going to assume her Awakened Devil Fruit, though, is straight broken. Now, anyways, let's also talk about the beginning of the chapter. So we have Eva-chan. So Eva, we get to have her back, which makes me very happy. I missed her so much. She's such a great character. I know some might not like her, but I've always loved hee-haw! I've always loved that. It always got me, like, pumped up. And at first glance, when I first heard it, I was a little bit annoyed. I'm not gonna lie when I heard that. But after rewatching the anime and then thinking about everything, I'm like, I missed Eva. She was such a great character, and just seeing how she was complimenting, Dragon on his son, like, Luffy's doing some good stuff. He even got Germa, kicked out of the world government, to also, Sanji as well being affiliated with Germa. Eva's like, what? Like, this is crazy. So I love it. It was just a really great moment of the chapter. And then on top of that, just seeing Sabo getting very happy thanks to, Luffy progressing and all that in the news that hit everybody around the world. Speaking of which, I really like the koala little nod that Oda did, which was a very dark nod, by the way. I want to point it out. So Koala said, like, oh, ever since he saw the news in the paper, he's been smiling, and he's gonna have a stiff face if he keeps that up. Something along the lines of that. That's what Koala said. And I'm like, Koala, did you really just say that? And I'm like, Oda, did you just do that? Because FYI, if you don't remember, Koala, her origin, she always forcibly smiled because she was a slave. So, stiff face, smiling all the time, how she was as a kid, and then she's saying that about Sabo because he's smiling thanks to Luffy. I'm like, yo, Oda, chill. Like, chill, man. Like, you have no chill when it comes to Koala, it seems, just for that scene alone with the chapter. But okay, so with all that out of the way, that's pretty much it. The chapter is very simple, which makes a lot of sense because obviously deadlines of Golden Week, so let's clarify that. Many of you reading this chapter might have noticed that the chapter length was very short. It felt like a very short chapter. Well, the reason for that was because of Golden Week, and Oda did not have the time to put as many pages in the chapter compared to like he usually does because of just how Golden Week usually is. That's kind of why, My Hero Academia had a bunch of sketches in it because of just the deadlines of Golden Week. So there you go to clarify that why Oda's chapter felt very short this week was because of Golden Week. But I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. I love you guys. Chibi out.